Everyone, welcome to Global Kitchen with Chef Hari again. So I hope you've had a wonderful day today celebrating the greatest of all people in the world, the mothers of our world. Happy Mother's Day to everybody. I had the great fortune of being able to talk to my mother this morning, and she's going to be 90 this Christmas Eve actually. So it was amazing to hear her voice and speak to her on video phone. And so I thought what I'd do today is share with you a set of cooking fundamentals that have to do with, first of all, one of my mother's favorite dishes in the world, and that is soup. You know, I didn't realize this until very late in life, that my mother loves soup, and who knew? So what I want to do today is make you a soup. It's not any one kind of soup, it's a bunch of ingredients that will transform themselves using great techniques and sound techniques in a layered approach in making a delicious, nutritious, and deep flavored soup. So in my book, you know, if you can make a good soup, you can basically cook anything you want. It's that basic. Just like if you can bake bread, you can do just about anything you want in the world. So soup making to me is really fundamental. So let me just walk you through a few of the ingredients that I have today. Most of these are ingredients I just found, right? So I didn't go shopping for soup ingredients, and that's the beauty of soup. So in a soup, there are some basic sets of ingredients. You've got a fat medium of some kind, typically. You've got aromatics. So in this case, we have onions, celery, shishito peppers. It could be any bell peppers you want, and then carrots. So classically in French cuisine, onions, celery, and carrots make up a mirepoix. In Creole Cajun cuisine, onions, celery, and peppers make up a holy trinity. So I go, why not meld the two together? So I have both a mirepoix and a holy trinity at the same time. There are no rules about that. And then I have some hotter chilies. This is serrano. And then some flavoring ingredients. I'm from India, clearly. So I always try to sneak ginger into all my dishes. So there's some minced ginger, minced garlic, and some bay leaves. Now for some unusual ingredients. This is typical of Persian cuisine. The use of fresh citrus in sauces as well as soups as well as rice dishes. So I found an old and beat up lime in the fridge, which was already zested because I'd used it for another application. So I just diced up the lime, the entire lime, diced up, right? So that's just diced up lime. And then I happen to have some radish, some fresh herbs from the garden as well as in the fridge, salt and pepper, of course, some extra virgin olive oil. You could use just about any fat you wanted. And then you need some sort of a protein, right? So if this is a soup that's meant to be a meal, it would be good to have vitamins, of course, essentials, antioxidants, and then some sort of protein. So this is a vegetarian soup, but in practice, of course, these chickpeas, these garbanzos, could have been substituted with, say, chicken or shrimp or fish, and the timing of when you would add those dishes matters. So let's start with the process of building flavor, right? So start with some extra virgin olive oil. How much? Maybe 1/4 cup. And then this is a hot pan. You want to make sure the pan's already hot. And start with the basic mirepoix trinity ingredients, right? So onions, celery, and I'm going to bring this pot to you in a moment so you can kind of see how these flavors develop. Peppers, these are not hot peppers, these are just flavoring peppers, capsicum if you will. Carrots, more carrots because I had them, because why not? And we stop right here, right? So you got to build a flavor of these aromatics sort of doing the thing in the pan. So almost any good soup starts with some sort of a layering of aromatics in the pan and some kind of a hot oil. Now, if fat is sort of prohibitive in your lifestyle and your dietary kind of restrictions, you may certainly leave the oil out and think of this as just a poaching kind of a stage. So you would start with some sort of a broth, and you would add the same aromatics, the same ingredients in this poaching environment. Okay? So these onions and celeries and carrots and bell peppers are going to kind of do their thing. And here's a key step. So this was key step number 1, right? A hot pot, some sort of a fat medium. I use extra virgin olive oil. And flavoring aromatics. Onions, celery, carrots, and bell peppers. And you may go, how much of each? Well, in classic French cuisine, it's a 2-1-1 ratio. So 2 parts onion, 1 part celery, 1 part carrots. Clearly you saw that I broke those rules here. I had a lot more carrots than I did the other stuff. And that's where you want to deviate, right? So that's the beauty of making a soup. That's the beauty of making food your own. You know, make it your own. There are no rules in this regard. If you want to be really technical and you're going to be tested on this by a master chef, certainly follow the classic recipes. But I'm not about to teach you about things like that. I just want to teach you ideas that will almost always create a depth of flavor that is hard to imagine. So, these vegetables are going to sweat in this pot, basically become translucent. That takes about 4 or 5 minutes. Now, that was key step number 1. If you don't hear this sound, your pot isn't hot enough, right? So it's time to turn up the pot. So I hope you've had a good Mother's Day, and I hope you've taken the time to either reminisce and have great memories of your mother or mothers in your life, or even better yet, if possible, share some really valuable, incredible, timeless time with your mother. You know, if you've known me long enough, you would know that, you know, the women in my life, my mother, my sister-in-laws, my wife, play an incredible role in the way I function as a human being, in my formation, if you will. So I would say most children think that way about their mothers. It's no surprise that Mother's Day is the #1 dining out day in the restaurant world. So I hope you've had a chance to either cook for your mother, or think of your mother, or talk to your mother, celebrate your mother. Okay, so these aromatics are going to do a thing. Key step number 2, extract the flavor. A little bit of salt, and a little bit of freshly ground Malabar pepper that Jennifer got me. The Malabar pepper is pepper from the Malabar coast in India. It's the origin of black pepper, if you will, right? A lot of wars, many wars have been fought over this very same spice. I'm fortunate to have this in my home. No wars here, though. Alright, so aromatics, salt, pepper. This is a translucent stage. You want to kind of work this. Now, here's the key. Do I cover the pot? Do I not cover the pot? I certainly have a cover. I'm going to talk about this just a moment. You don't want to cover the pot at this stage because you're not trying to really steam anything. You want evaporation to happen and you want caramelization to happen. If you shut the pot, if you close the pot, the natural sugars of the vegetables don't have a chance to caramelize. The Maillard reaction doesn't happen. And the flavor that happens at the bottom of the pot is really where the bulk of the depth of flavor comes from. So do not cover this pot. So now imagine these vegetables have gone for about, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes. Now it's time to bring in the heavy hitters, if you will. Fresh garlic, bay leaves, fresh ginger, minced up. Some of these ingredients are optional. It's just what I happen to have and find contribute tremendously to a really deep flavored soup. Touch more salt. And now for this mysterious ingredient, chopped up fresh citrus. This happens to be fresh lime with a little bit of zest on it still, a little bit of skin on it still. This is still the saute stage. To saute in French cuisine is to jump in hot fat, essentially. So if you don't hear a sound and things aren't jumping in the pot, you're not really sauteing, right? So that term means something. And if you could just smell this at this stage, to quote a famous chef, if we had smell-o-vision, and you know who I'm talking about when I say that, if we had smell-o-vision on this pot right now, you would be sitting here thinking, when is the soup going to be ready? Well, the soup is actually not going to be ready in real time. And I want to sort of dispel the myth that you can cook just about anything in 15 or 20 minutes and say, that's it, great, right? That's not true. You can't cook deep flavored dishes in 15 or 20 minutes. we happen to do that in restaurants because we've already paid our dues. We've already spent our time, hours and hours of prep. For example, this little prep that was here, the mise en place, everything in place. You know, it took me about 30 minutes to kind of put together. So you sort of have to factor that into your cooking time, right? Now, if you already have these things in your refrigerator as standard core ingredients, certainly you can go a lot faster. So, onions, peppers, celery, carrots, bay leaves, chopped up fresh limes, garlic, ginger, bay leaves, salt, pepper, olive oil. And you might go, how do you remember that you added all that? Well, that's the point of it, right? There's always a method to the madness. There's a certain idea that's already in place. I'm not making stuff up as I go. I've already thought this out, right? So I know what ingredients already went in. I know when they went in and how long they've been in there. Now for the punchy ingredients. Fresh chili pepper. This is serrano. This is going to cause some fumes, obviously, right? A little bit of salt, pepper again. Let me go, why are you adding so much salt? I'm not adding so much salt. I'm adding salt in stages. And I can smell the serranos actually. I'm adding salt in stages because they allow the ingredients to release their flavor. Radish, why? Because I had it. Red radish, simply quartered up. And now for the protein. So this will be the stage to either take some grilled proteins, maybe chicken, maybe pork. In this case, chickpeas. I can smell the serrano. As a famous chef would say, we're really cooking here. Hey, Chef Emerald, how are you? Chickpeas, garbanzos. This is from a can. Certainly you may take the time to soak them overnight. Par cook them for about 2 or 3 hours in some salted water, and it's the same product. So chickpeas. So the point I want to make here is the staging of the ingredients, right? Olive oil, Trinity Mirepoix, salt, pepper, ginger, garlic, bay leaves, and then the delicate ingredients. Radish, chickpeas. You could add tomato in here. Now, if you know me, you would know that I make a lot of dishes that have a lot of spices. And by spices, I don't mean chili pepper, right? I'll spend several classes moving forward on the use of spices to whether it's to make a curry dish or some other kind of deep sauce. So I'm not going to use any spices in this dish. To me, a spice is something that's derived either in whole form or in powdered form from, say, a seed or a bark or a root, say, right? So there are no spices in this dish. There's no cayenne, there's no cumin, there's no coriander. Certainly you could add all of those things, turmeric, saffron. I mean, the list is plentiful. But I want to show you that you can make deep dishes, like a deep soup that I'm doing here, without really always being heavy-handed with spices, right? The temperature is getting warm. So you don't always want spiced dishes. You want flavorful dishes, but not necessarily spiced. Now for the piece de resistance, if you will. You noticed I had a whole bunch of vegetables here, right? Well, those vegetables didn't come cut up that way, right? They came in their whole form. And so I used all of the trims of those vegetables, the skins of the onions, the ends of the garlic, the cores of the carrots, etc., etc. I just simply boiled them for about 45 minutes in water, and what we have is a brilliant homemade fresh vegetable stock. So one of the keys to a great soup is naturally a great stock or a great broth. We have the makings of a great soup already. Now, if I added a whole bunch of tomatoes in here and a little bit of water, with enough time I could get a great soup. I'm intentionally leaving the tomato. The tomato tends to be a crutch in my opinion. Especially canned tomatoes. If you happen to use canned tomatoes, make sure the canned tomatoes do not have added some sort of a chloride product in them. It tends to make the product very acidic and in not a good way. And it takes a long time for that flavor to go away, that canned flavor to go away. And if you happen to use fresh tomatoes, you'll need a lot of tomatoes to make a real sauce. I've used the homemade vegetable stock from all the ingredients that are already purchased. So once this stews for another 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, just strain some of the stock in here. How much? Just barely covering the ingredients. Okay, voila. Stir it up a little bit. And let me come around and show you this a little bit. That's what it looks like, right? Not sure if you can see that. That's kind of what it looks like. Right? It's about that much water. The induction burner is complaining already that nothing's on it. There you go, buddy. At this point in the cooking class, I would normally go, any questions? And moving forward, I hope to make all of this a lot more interactive. So please be patient with me. Jennifer's doing an amazing job on the other side, managing like 3 devices. But moving forward, I'll try to make this as interactive as possible. So you might have the opportunity to even ask me questions, throw some rotten tomatoes at me virtually, so on and so forth. It's all possible. We'll just have to play it one day at a time, one class at a time. So bring this soup essentially that's very raw and very early in its development of flavor to a light simmer. Now, key step number 4 probably. Taste the broth. It's totally bland. It's devoid of flavor. But I know that given enough time, it's going to develop itself into an amazing soup. What I do know for sure is it needs some salt. Right? Don't be bashful. This is the time to add some salt. It does not need any more pepper. The pepper is adequate. The Malabar pepper is amazing. Dissolve the salt a little bit. And taste the soup again. Taste the broth again. Could use a little bit more. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, food has to be seasoned, right? There's no way around it. You gotta taste your food, and you gotta be happy with the flavor you taste. And you have to ask yourself at this stage, what am I looking for? What you're looking for, essentially, is a broth that's very close to the end flavor in terms of sodium level of your soup. It can be slightly less, but should not be more. If it's more, it's going to get even more salty. Alright, so this is in a good stage.
Chef, you have a question.
Uh-oh, here we go. Question.
What type of salt is best in food?
Wonderful. So salt is salt. Chemically, salt is sodium chloride. There are no preferences. Now, there are 100 different kinds of salts that have their own flavor and character. I use a generic coarse salt, like a kosher salt. And it's not because it's kosher, it's just because it's coarse. And I can feel how much salt I'm adding. So the irony is, kosher salt is coarse, so actually by adding a teaspoon of kosher salt, you're not adding nearly as much as salt as you would add if you were adding a teaspoon of iodized salt. It's purely a physics issue, right? So if it's finely ground salt, then the same amount of salt is going to be more sodium. It's coarser salt, so it doesn't occupy nearly as much volume by square area. So this is generic kosher salt, and I'm tasting as I go. I got 1 more spoon left. It better be right at this stage. It's simmering away. It's there. I can really taste the lime, right? So that's the je ne sais quoi. That's that mystery ingredient. Go, wow, did you add vinegar? No, I didn't add vinegar. Did you add a whole bunch of citrus? Yes and no. I didn't squeeze any citrus juice, but that roasted citrus flavor is what distinguishes a soup like this from your generic boiled chickpea soup. So this is simmering away. Let me cut the heat down just a hair. Now comes the time to cover the soup. Only because I want the chickpeas to cook a little longer, right? And especially if you have proteins, animal proteins, they need to cook a little longer. You have 2 options. You have a solid lid, where you can't really see anything. It's the perfect lid for this pot. Or you have a clear lid. I opt for the clear lid. Why? Because I can kind of see what's going on in the pot. But it's not this mystery concoction that's invisible until I open the lid. So these little things kind of matter. They matter because you have to feel it. You can't let food get away, especially when you've spent so much time and energy sort of building the flavors and hoping for something amazing at the end of this all. So there you have it. These are the soup fundamentals, right? Layering of flavors, proper knife cuts. By proper knife cuts, I don't mean meticulously exact knife cuts. I mean knife cuts that would fit on a spoon. So when you eat the soup, those pieces of vegetables should fit on the spoon in a way that makes sense. A potato that's that big is kind of hard to eat unless it cooks down. Olive oil, aromatics, stronger aromatics, dry herbs, a good broth, seasoning along the way, closing the lid, simmering for a while. This needs about probably 45 minutes or so. And after this is done, you should take about half of the broth that's in here with some of the chickpeas, blend it up in a food processor, so that part of it is blended, and add it back into the pot. And this is a standard trick for restaurants, that you take part of the soup that has a starchy component, you blend it up, and add it back to the soup, and that naturally thickens up the soup. So this was a basic vegetable soup with no roux, no dairy, just fundamental cooking, right? So at the end of this all, about an hour from now, you will have an amazing soup that's going to taste even better tomorrow. And that will be the time to add some fresh herbs. After the soup is cooked completely, that's when you add the fresh herbs. So there you have it. I'm just going to stop here by letting you know that this soup is on its way to being amazing if I give it enough time. I would say 45 minutes to an hour, and you're going to have this rich, deep, tangy, spicy, delicious, Mediterranean-inspired kind of a soup. So that's soup fundamentals. You know, invest in some basic ingredients and always follow these steps of layering flavors. And I say to anybody, if you can make a good soup, you can cook, right? If you can make a good soup, you're a great saucier. Because soups can often be transformed into sauces, right? You don't always need to follow the mother sauces of a classical cuisine. You don't have to ask yourself, do I need to how to make a hollandaise? Do I need to how to make a mother sauce like a bechamel? No, you don't need to know those things. But what a lot of those mother sauces have in common is fundamentals of layering of flavor. I see there's a question out there.
What beans are best in soup?
Great question. So beans come in two shapes at least. Some come canned, like the ones I used today, or you get dried beans. In fact, earlier today I made a black bean soup for my mother-in-law and my father-in-law. It's one of their favorite things to eat. If you have dried beans, you should soak them in warm water overnight. If you use fresh beans, then not so much. The type of bean that's best, that works really best in soups, in my opinion, is either a cannellini bean or a white bean. It's creamy naturally, and they cook relatively quickly, and they add a lot of richness and body to the soup, and they're very versatile with greens. So green beans and white bean soup are a classic, right? Caldo verde, classic Portuguese soup. Hey Chef Emerald, how are you? One of his favorite soups, I know that. So I would say if I had to pick only one bean to be used in a soup, it would be a white bean of some sort, whether it's a Great Northern white bean, or it's a cannellini bean, or a gigante bean, or something like that. Question?
Same question, similar question. What meats are the best in soups?
Great. So, meats are, the type of meat that's best in soup depends on the cut of the meat, if you ask me, right? So you do not want to use a tenderloin or a delicate loin in a soup. It's wasted. You want to use always an underutilized cut, whether it's a shoulder, it's a working muscle. You want to use a working muscle, ideally with the bone in. Say a bone-in working muscle, whether it's beef, or it's lamb, or it's pork, or it's chicken, or it's duck, or it's what have you, right? So anytime you have a lesser cut, a part that's not tender, if you will, one that requires a moist cooking environment, which here, so you're basically braising the dish. So braising is to cook something in a moist environment. It's going to naturally create a stock in the pot. You don't even need a stock, in my opinion. If you start with a lesser cut, a working muscle with the bone in, about 4 hours of low stewing will naturally create a stock. You don't need to go buy a meat stock. You don't need to go buy a chicken stock. The bone in and the lesser cut, the braising process will naturally create the stock. I hope that helps.
Last question.
Yes, last question.
Summer soup.
Summer soups, classically you have either cold soups or your warm soups. What I'm really making here is a summer soup, frankly. You can add a whole bunch of greens to this at the very end, and this is a summer soup. It's brothy in nature, there's no dairy, it's not rich with butter and cream. Chickpeas add a natural Mediterranean kind of a rich, creaminess to them, but it's also fresh and vibrant. Gazpachos, naturally, cold soups that are simply pureed. Imagine taking fine ripe tomatoes and cucumbers and just blending them with some fresh basil or fresh parsley, seasoning them with a little bit of olive oil. It's not a classic gazpacho, but just a puree of a fresh ingredient can be a soup. It can be cold, it can be warm. Seafood soups are great. A cioppino would be a wonderful summer soup. Lentil soups are great. Typically we think of lentil soups as being a warm winter dish, but depending on how you prepare, this very same soup could have been a lentil soup. And lentil soups also, correctly prepared, and if you don't add a lot of heavy ingredients like potatoes, can be very light and refreshing. The use of greens are amazing, right? So don't hesitate to use greens, don't hesitate to use fresh herbs at the very end. Timing is everything. When you add ingredients makes all the difference. So I'll leave you with this thought. Almost every time I walk through the grocery store, the clerk or the checkout attendant almost always asks me, "Wow, look at all these ingredients you bought. What are you going to make today?" And my pain in the ass response is almost always the same. And my answer is the following: I'm just going to throw everything into a pot and see what happens. So there you have it. Throw everything into a pot, but put them into a pot in an order that makes sense. You'll almost always end up with an amazing soup. And if it's not an amazing soup, you can transform it into an amazing sauce. So there you have it. Soup Fundamentals, Global Cooking with Chef Hari. Thank you for being with me. Happy Mother's Day. Thank you, Jennifer. Love you all. Take care. Ciao.